Prabhupada confided in a devotee family in Calcutta, or a family in Calcutta, I should say, who were actually old friends of Prabhupada, I mean, you know, from way back. And one senior Vaishnavi in ISKCON was there when they were talking, and they were speaking in Bengali. And then afterwards, she asked these people, what was Prabhupada saying? And Prabhupada said that his movement grew so fast, he didn't expect it, and he was just sort of trying to keep things going because because Prabhupada, you know, I mean, from the very beginning, Prabhupada wanted just to retire and write books. Prabhupada did not want to become the manager of ISKCON. He dreaded that, and if you look at, for example, Mukunda Goswami's biography of Prabhupada, which is a great book, you see that Prabhupada is more than happy just to be the guru, and it's the American devotees are figuring out where to open temples, what neighborhood to open a temple, how to reach Western people is their idea, you know, the peace formula because of the war thing, so Prabhupada did that. And Prabhupada was delighted just to be what he had been since he took sannyas, just a guru, spiritual leader. But then ISKCON grew so fast that it actually grew beyond the maturity and the ability of his disciples to manage. And so if you look at ISKCON history, and so quickly it came to the point where, unlike in the past where they had these nice little centers in New York and San Francisco and Montreal, and the devotees were doing nicely, it grew so fast, there were so many people and so much money, and especially in book distribution, where, I mean, ISKCON grew exponentially, that his disciples could not manage it, and Prabhupada had to re-engage, and he hated it. It's not that Prabhupada wanted to be in that position of managing. In fact, he kept saying, get me out of here. I want to sit down and write my books. I don't want to be doing this. So the reason I mention this is because Prabhupada, as he presents himself, I mean, Prabhupada says this over and over, he's a pure devotee, there's no question about that. Prabhupada actually in Los Angeles, right upstairs here in his room, told me personally, privately, that he was an eternally liberated soul. He privately told me that. And when he told me that, it was such a powerful statement that, I mean, I could practically see it because Prabhupada had extraordinary potency. So we're not talking about Prabhupada's status as an eternally liberated devotee. But Prabhupada himself said that he said, if you think a pure devotee is materially omniscient, you don't understand what it means to be a pure devotee. That is a philosophical misunderstanding. That's what Prabhupada said. And so Prabhupada, if you look at him in the real world, he had tremendous agility, he was extremely intelligent, even materially, and he was constantly trying things out. I mean, look in India, before he came to America, he thought, okay, let's do a League of Devotees in Jhansi, because Prabhupada, you know, during his life, they had the League of Devotees, a League of Nations, after World War I. And so that was the model. So Prabhupada said, okay, we'll do a League of Devotees in Jhansi, and he was into it. That was his program. That's the way he was going to spread Krishna consciousness, except it didn't work. You know, the building was taken away, and he could have just stayed in Jhansi and looked for another building, but he shifted gears. No, at one point, I thought this was the way to go, but I don't think that now. And so then he went to Delhi, and he printed a sheet, Back to Godhead, and he went around himself, had heat stroke, I mean, he's working very hard, giving out his Back to Godhead. And then he came to a point, and he thought this is the way to go. But then he thought, no, it's not working. It's not, I mean, obviously, some people were taking the sheets. Obviously, he had friends. He was meeting people. It's not like no one gave him the time of day. But he had bigger plans. So then someone said to him, well, people take books more seriously. So he went to Vrindavan, and he did the Bhagavatam, first canto. And then he gave it to prominent people in India, like the Prime Minister. There's that famous picture of Prabhupada. But that wasn't working either. Not to his satisfaction. So he thought, well, I'll go to America. And then he came to America, and he went to Butler. And if you read all the biographies of Prabhupada, when Prabhupada was in Butler, Pennsylvania, it's not that he got there and immediately said, I got to get out of here, you know. Oh no, stuck in old Butler again. Stuck in old Lodi. You know that song? Anyway. So if you look at the biographies, Prabhupada's in Butler, and he's working out of Butler. Butler is his base. he takes a little trip to Philadelphia, speaks at University of Pennsylvania where he met Thomas Hopkins. He speaks at the YMCA in Butler. And it's only after some time passes that Prabhupada realizes the world revolution is not going to start in Butler, Pennsylvania. So he decides we have to shift gears again. Of course, Prabhupada grew up in one of the biggest cities in Asia, Calcutta. So he thought, I'll go to the Big Apple. You know, he went to New York. And then when he went to New York, at first he's living with and working through the auspices of Dr. Mishra. And again, when Prabhupada's working with Dr. Mishra at first, he thinks this is a plan. This is a plan. And after a while, he realizes it's not a plan. Because he's too limited in what he can say, which Prabhupada would never tolerate. And, you know, he's trying to light a little Vaishnava fire, and he's living with someone who keeps putting the fire out because he's preaching, you know, a wrong philosophy. And so it's after a while that Prabhupada sees this is not the plan. And I mean, we can go on for Prabhupada's whole life. I was personally with Prabhupada in so many of his morning walks. There was a time when Prabhupada, his big thing was the In God We Trust political party. And by big thing, I mean every morning walk, that's what he wanted to talk about. And he started the party, and some devotees became candidates, Balavanta in Atlanta, Amarendra in Gainesville. But then he began to see there was a social dynamic taking place, that some people who were in temples doing Sankirtan were starting to shift to the political work, and that was affecting the temple economies. And then Prabhupada said that we cannot do this through the temple. We cannot do this through the temples. It has to be another structure. And in those days, I mean, there was no other structure, so the In God We Trust party kind of ended there. But at one time, it was Prabhupada's main idea. And then he stopped it because he saw the consequences. So Prabhupada was constantly shifting strategy when he saw consequences. That's the real Prabhupada. And so at one point he thought, okay, there's all these brahmacharis, they are doing fantastic service, so why get entangled? And Prabhupada himself never really wanted to get married, but he lived at a time when, you know, that's what you did. His parents told him to get married. So, but if Prabhupada, you know, when Prabhupada saw that brahmacharis were not making it, he would insist they get married. And if Prabhupada would have stayed on the planet longer and seen very large numbers of brahmacharis not making it, he would have said, you know, most of you guys need to get married. There was a time when Prabhupada insisted that little children be sent to the Gurukula. And then, you know, results started to come in because Prabhupada, as a pure devotee, trusted. He loved his spiritual children. He trusted them. And a lot of them betrayed that trust. And obviously when Prabhupada saw, if he had seen the consequences, he would not have continued sending letters saying everyone send their kids to these people. So again, you know, in my view, what Prabhupada really needs from us is that at a certain age, you know, you're a senior devotee, at a certain age, we have to be adults. And what we need to do is, obviously, strictly follow Prabhupada's teaching, strictly repeat his message, work within his ISKCON, and at all the basic principles, strictly follow Prabhupada. We are followers of Prabhupada, that's who we are. But in cases where something is just, you know, not working, we need to make an adjustment. I mean, it's funny because even the most conservative devotees in ISKCON, their instructions, direct instructions from Prabhupada, right in the Bhagavatam, not even a letter, saying send your kids to Gurukula. So after all these, you know, Gurukula scandals became public, how many conservative leaders in ISKCON sent their kids to Gurukula? Like, hardly any. And yet, there it is right in the Bhagavatam. So, what I'm saying, liberal or conservative, everyone in their own way is making practical adjustments within Prabhupada's instructions. And Prabhupada, his genius is, among other, I mean, there's many aspects to his genius, but one aspect of Prabhupada's genius is that he gave us enough instructions so that we can find the right thing to do within Prabhupada's instructions. And of course, the quickest way to become stupid is to be fanatical. Fanaticism is the quickest road to stupidity. And so we actually have to look at everything that Prabhupada said and see what works, because Prabhupada gave us enough instructions to make relevant adjustments. And that's why it's so dangerous. Take one statement from Prabhupada on a practical matter and just run with it, run it up the flagpole, because you can bet your bottom dollar that there are other instructions from Prabhupada on that same topic for other circumstances, if it's regarding practical situations. And so ISKCON needs to have the same flexibility that Prabhupada used, and Prabhupada actually gave us the foundation. So we can be flexible and strictly follow Prabhupada's instructions if we look at the whole picture.
Thank you for that answer.